The morning the truck wouldn't move was the morning I learned how small rules can feel like a fist. We had the sky low and gray, Maya's favorite scarf tucked into the coffin like a last stubborn smile, and the lane up to the sycamore, the place she always said she'd rest under, choked by a strip of metal and an iron gate that shouldn't have been closed at all. I stood there, in my suit that still smelled faintly of smoke from the candles, and watched a woman in a blazer with a smile that never reached her eyes say, "I'm sorry, sir. By the bylaws, we can't allow that." Her name was Gloria Finch, president of Mapleview Commons, born to the kind of small-town order that thinks compassion is a loophole. If you want to know the thing that makes people do awful little things, the petty, bureaucratic cruelty that grows teeth, it's not that they love power. It's that they love being right more. Gloria had been right about everything for a long time. She had keys to locked bins, signatures on fines, a printed list of infractions that read like a menu: paint color violations, unapproved bird feeders, too many lawn gnomes, and when she spoke, folks around here learned to nod. But on that day, right didn't look like regulation. It looked like a wall, and our truck couldn't get through. I remember standing by the passenger window, watching my brother hold Maya's hand like a talisman. Gloria folded her hands, spoke about precedents, about maintaining property values, and when I asked a simple question about the humanity of one final drive, she smiled that same smile and said, "We have to be consistent. You build systems in my line of work. I'm a technician. I make things obey logic, and part of my brain cataloged the gate cameras, the access logs, the way her car keys clicked like a metronome. I wanted to smash something then, but instead I watched the truck inch forward when the old man 2 houses down stepped onto the road and put his body in front of her clipboard. He didn't push, didn't shout. He just stood there like a human prayer, and the driver, maybe he had a hard ease through. People will surprise you when you let them. That moment could have been a mercy. For Maya, it almost was. For me, it became a promise I didn't know I'd make. The next week, grief hollowed me out and filled me with questions. How had a homeowner association become a place where you could be denied even a goodbye? It didn't make sense that a document drafted by bored people in fluorescent rooms could sit between a man and the thing he loved most. So I started to look at bylaws, minutes, invoices that read like riddles, and the more I poked, the more things leaked out like rotten water. Gloria wasn't alone. There was Tom Park, treasurer, committee chair, the kind of guy who says rules and thinks he's being witty, who smiled too easily and owned half the landscaping company that built Mapleview. There were unexpected fines that appeared on accounts like mushrooms after rain, and a network of preferred vendors who suddenly won contracts and then donated to the HOA's little slush fund. People called it good governance. I called it a funnel. What made this personal wasn't just the money, though. What they skimmed would have paid for Maya's care, and that thought lodged itself like a stone. It was the way the system ate the small kindnesses that used to live between neighbors. It made me think, if rules are teeth, someone is wielding the jaw. I started small: FOIA requests, public records, a lot of late-night spreadsheets. My work taught me how to find footprints in logs. Code leaves traces, and so do people who are sloppy with their greed. In a server room glow, I matched gate overrides with timestamps in Gloria's swipe card history, and my hands shook the first time 2 things lined up. The gate's override log showed a sequence of manual entries that matched the same 3-digit code Gloria used for the common area lights. Coincidence, I told myself. Coincidence until it wasn't. That, until it wasn't, came in an envelope on my porch: no return address, just a thumb drive and a note that read, "If you want the rest, meet me behind the maintenance shed at midnight." I don't recommend midnight meetings to anyone unless the story needs it, but curiosity and grief make you reckless. The guy who showed up, Tom, the treasurer, looked 10 years older than his age. He tried to laugh it off like a joke, but his hands kept fiddling with the lid of his coffee cup. "You don't have to do this," he said, like he was confessing to a priest. I didn't mean for it to get like this. Turns out he had been funneling late fees into an account that paid for landscaping contracts and board member retreats. He'd been taking favors, slipping invoices, generating fines for things that shouldn't have been fined. He'd also signed a few gate overrides when Gloria called and couldn't get to the office. Emergencies, she called them. The word emergency in an HOA context is elastic. He gave me spreadsheets, scanned checks, and the thing that finally made me stop breathing for a second, a ledger where special projects, was shorthand for kickbacks. I printed everything, stapled it with a trembling hand. And the thing about truth is this. It is heavy, but it travels. I started with one neighbor, Diane on Elm, who'd been quietly paying fines she never understood. I slid a packet under her door, and she read it once, twice, and then she called me and said, "We need to do something." That we multiplied. We filled the pews and filled the silence with paper and proof. The day we confronted Gloria was the type of scene they write into small films: fluorescent lights, folding chairs, the gym smelling faintly of old sweat and locker soap. Gloria arrived poised like she was entering her living room. She started with diction, procedural integrity, and the crowd nodded because a few words sounded like solidity. Then I stood up, unfolded the stapled pile on the podium, and started to speak. I tried to be calm. I failed sometimes. People need to hear the ledger read aloud. Numbers do something to a room when they reveal who got money and who lost their dignity. Tom stood up, hands shaking, and said words that cracked the varnish off the air. I signed things I shouldn't have. He named Gloria's accounts, the landscaping invoices, the checks that landed in private envelopes. She tried to interject with that same practiced smile, told him he was mistaken, accused him of misunderstanding the contracts. Her voice had the thin edge of someone whose identity was intertwined with being right. Then the room, which had been slumped with polite resignation, breathed like a thing coming awake. She attacked with process, motions, bylaws, the sort of legalese that can make a community forget it's made of people. We countered with receipts and recorded gate logs and a string of neighbor testimonies about fines that appeared and disappeared. Phones recorded everything. A neighbor who works as a reporter streamed the meeting. When she tried to intimidate us with threats of litigation, someone asked, plain as a bell, "Are you going to deny blocking a hearse?" The question landed like a stone. Power has a funny habit of dissolving when it's looked at hard enough. Gloria started to stumble, not because we were cruel, but because we'd shown her that the story of being right didn't match the facts. She apologized, the kind that wasn't humble so much as tactical, and resigned 2 days later under pressure from a letter signed by neighbors and a regulatory complaint filed with the county. The county sent inspectors. The landscaping contracts went up for review. Tom cooperated with investigators and, in exchange, got a reduced sentence of community service and a public apology that felt thin but real. What happened next didn't erase Maya. Clearing the records, forcing new elections, changing policies, those were things that returned some dignity to the neighborhood. But grief doesn't have a convenient checkbox. I still go to the Sycamore. I still talk out loud when I'm alone, because that's the only way to fold her into a mourning. But there was a deeper stitch put back into the fabric here. Neighbors who once nodded at barbecues now nodded at each other's losses. The question that kept dogging me was why a lifetime of small cruelties goes unchecked until someone sharpens grief into action. I think it's because systems reward silence. Old men get keys and young people get polite indifference. But when someone is willing to name the ledger, something shifts. People who had been breathing in quiet compliance started to remember they had been chosen to live next to each other, not under someone else's rubric of what a life should look like. I want to be clear, this wasn't a Hollywood ending. There's still tension in certain corners. But for now, when I walk past the Sycamore and see the way sunlight divides itself across the grass, it feels less like exile and more like what Maya wanted: a place where light gets to be honest without asking permission. We tell stories because they map the distance between what happened and what might. If you watch this and you live in a place with committees and bylaws, maybe take a second to read the meeting minutes. Maybe check who your HOA's vendors are. Sometimes rocking is the polite word for the only honest thing. So tell me, have you seen a small rule become a big wound? Did a group step up, or did the system win? Drop your story in the comments. Tell me what felt right or wrong. And if something in this hits close, share it with someone who likes neighborhood stories with a side of realness. If you want more, subscribe, because I plan to keep telling the ones that matter, the messy ones with people in them, not just bylaws.